Hello and welcome back to my channel. I am Abigail Grace, or Abby, and this is Kate, and today we are going to be doing my August reading wrap up. This is several days late. I had people in town and didn't get around to filming this before the month was up, but I will say that this month I read a lot, and I only have 3 physical books that I read because the majority of my reading was on my Kindle. And I will say also, I think I read 4 or 5 arcs this month, so a lot of them, so obviously those are not released yet. Actually, just kidding, I did read the arc for Wild Eyes in August, and that actually got released on September 3rd. So that is out when this video is up, and I will talk about Wild Eyes when I get to Wild Eyes. Sorry, Kate's trying to find a comfortable position where she can sit while we do this, but I am just gonna hop right in. I've got my Goodreads pulled up so I can remember all the books and the ratings that I gave them. So we're gonna start out first. We've got Past, Present, Future, which is the second in like Rowan and Neil's story. I had this as an arc and then did not read it before the book actually came out. So the book's out now. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I think what made it 4 was how like realistic the relationship between Rowan and Neil is. From the first book, it ends with them like you get like a happily ever after, but also you know that they're about to go to different schools in the fall and that they're gonna have to do long distance. So this kind of picks up right where the other book ends, and it's like, okay, this is how it actually works out when they are doing long distance in a new relationship in college in 2 different cities. And it felt very realistic in that way, and the struggles they went through were realistic, and I thought it was a good way to continue the story because I loved Rowan and Neil's story. It's like academic rivals to lovers. If you have not read the first one in that series, which is Today, Tonight, Tomorrow, I would definitely pick it up. It's YA, but so good. I love Rachel Lynn Solomon. She is a very talented author. Next, I actually did read this book on my Kindle, and then I gave it 5 stars, so I bought the physical copy. As you can tell, this is indie published. It's got that kind of like matte cover that indie books often have, but as I said, I gave this one 5 stars just completely unexpectedly. I just randomly chose it. I was flying back from Scotland at the beginning of this month, which if you haven't seen my Scotland vlogs, those are both parts 1 and 2 are up, so you should go watch those. But this is the book that I read on the plane on the way back because I needed to stay awake the whole time, and it's kind of a workplace romance. It is workplace romance, but it's childhood friends to lovers, and the FMC, Lucy, she is working as an assistant for her like childhood crush. It's her brother's best friend. She's had a crush on him for forever, and she is working at his company. He's the CEO, and like honestly, I absolutely hated Felix, who's the MMC, who she has a crush on. Like, I don't want to spoil things because it really is like a good book. While they're together, at first, I despised him. He did not treat her right. He was totally taking advantage of her, and she completely let him walk all over her because she was so obsessed with him for so long that she was just like, it's fine, I don't care, whatever. And it rubbed me the wrong way, but also the way they end up is so perfect, and I loved her. Lucy. She was so sweet and relatable, and I cried. I can't even count. Probably 6 or 7 books that I read this month had a dead parent, dead sibling, a dead important figure in their life. And I cried so much this month reading books. And I did not pick up the book knowing that. And then next thing you know, oh, there's someone dead. Someone important to them is dead, and I'm gonna cry. Because I will cry. I will always cry. But I did give this one 5 stars. I would highly recommend. It's just so good. And I'd never read anything by Susie Tate before, so it was a nice surprise. So also, while I was traveling, I read on my Kindle. I've got my trusty Kindle here. Highland Fling by Megan Quinn, because I was in Scotland and it's set in Scotland. It was 3 stars. It was like an average romance. I can't remember like what the details are. Oh, now I remember. The FMC and her best friend moved to Scotland for 6 months to take over a coffee shop, and while over there she meets like, of course, a grumpy Scottish man, and they like don't like each other at first, but it's just because there's a bunch of sexual tension. It's kind of like Friends with Benefits starts out, and then of course it grows into something more. I gave this one 3 stars. It felt very middle of the road to me, but it was fun to read while I was in Scotland, and it did make me want to find a man wearing a kilt. Unfortunately, I did not, but it fed the delusion. Next, I read another arc, Norcliffe by K.A. Conley. I did give this one 3 stars. I feel like this is a good like intro to fantasy. It doesn't have heavy fantasy elements. There is a magic system. There's no magic system, but there is like a clan setup that was like something I recognized and felt familiar to me from other fantasy books. It was really simple, easy read. I read it in like one sitting. Is it amazing? No. Is it bad? No. It's kind of like, I don't want to say Vikings, it's clans. It's kind of also giving Scottish. And there's like rival clans. She's trying to like help her save her people, and she has to form this ally with people she doesn't really trust. Anyway, it was 3 stars. Next, I read If You Want Me by Helena Hunting. I did give this one 2 stars. So, this was Dad's best friend, major age gap. She was in her 20s and she was still in school, so I think she was 22, and he was obviously her dad's friend, and her dad's older, like 40, but he's 33, so it's an age gap. He's a hockey player. She's like hockey princess, like daddy's little girl, and you know how it plays out. It was spicy. It was really spicy. That gets like a 4 on the spice scale for me, honestly. Next, I read Apprentice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer. And I don't remember what I gave Assistant to the Villain when I read it last year, but as I started this one, I had to remember the last one because it wasn't top of mind, it wasn't fresh, and it took me a minute to get into it. So for that reason, I gave this one like a 3.75, but I really do think if you're looking for an intro to fantasy and you don't want to take fantasy too seriously, this is like silly, funny fantasy. Like, the bad guy, his real name is the villain. Like, that's what people call him. He's the villain. Like, it's very silly, goofy. It plays into a lot of like fairy tale tropes and fairy tale like things in this like fantasy kind of way. There is magic, and it's like a cute workplace romance because she's his like assistant and he's like her boss, but he's also a villain, and there's fantasy. It's kind of weird, but it's also very PG, like no spice in this at all. But I did give this one 3.75. I'll read the next one when it comes out because I am interested to see where the story goes. It's not my favorite, but again, if you're looking to not have a fantasy be taken so seriously, this could be for you. Next, I read The Darkness Within Us, which is the companion to The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. I've read several of Trisha's books before. I love her like Daughter of the Pirate Queen, Pirate King, and series. And obviously I read the first one. This is the companion to it. It's in the same world, but it's a different character. I thought it was going to be the same characters. It's not. It's the sister of the main character from book one. But basically, our FMC, she is married to an old man, and her plan all along was that he would die soon and she would get to inherit all of his money and live as a wealthy widower, and that's what she wanted. But someone comes along and claims to be the Duke's grandson and that he should be the one to inherit it, and so through that they end up having to live together in this estate while they figure out how to reconcile their differences and the fact that she is the widow, so she can still live there, but they don't get along. But also he's hiding a secret, and she takes it upon herself to figure out what that secret is because she thinks if she can unveil it, then she can get him to leave and she'll get to live there alone. There's a romance, and I would say spice, it's like a 1 to 2, like not super spicy. I would say it is an adult romance or an adult fantasy, but not super adult. I don't know. It's somewhere in between those two. Next, I read another arc. This is Book of the Month by Jennifer Probst. This comes out in October, and I gave this one 5 stars. I read a lot of 5-star books this month, you guys. Like, I gave several books in a row 5 stars, which never happens. And it felt like a fluke, but I just kept going with it. I was not going to mess around with it. If the Lord was giving me 5 stars, I was not going to say no to that. But this is basically an author who she is kind of, I want to say she's having writer's block, is I guess what she would term it. And she thinks that the only way she can get through this writer's block is if she gets her heart broken, and that way she can feel the emotions she needs to feel to write her new book. So she basically strikes a deal with Brick, this guy, in her like hometown. She's left the city and gone home, and she's like, hey, I'll help you save your store if you agree to date me and then break my heart. And he's like, okay. So they go into this agreement, and of course they fall for each other. And I don't want to, spoil things, but it was really good. And it's one of those books where like I woke up and was immediately thinking about it in the morning, and that's how I knew it was giving me 5 stars. Like if I wake up and I'm like, I really need to know what's going to happen, that's a 5-star feeling right there. Brick was really top tier boyfriend material. I love to see his like redemption arc in this. It was really good. I can't wait to get the physical copy. Like I'm so excited for it. Next, I listened to Drop Dead by Lily Chu. I gave this one 3 stars. It's an Audible exclusive, so you can only listen to it on Audible, and it's only an audio book. And it's these like rivals. They work at different like newspaper organizations, and they have to work together on a story. It was okay. I gave it 3 stars. Next, I read Summer Ever After by Courtney Keisel. This one I gave 3 stars. This was like a golf romance. It kind of reminded me of whatever that golf one was by Tessa Bailey, which I can't remember the name of currently, but he's a professional golfer. He's like going through a slump, or he's got the yips, and she kind of helps him get out of his golf slump. And it's best friend's brother, so they're kind of seeing each other in secret. It's really cute, but 3 stars. Next, I read the first Naturals book by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is like YA Criminal Minds. I'm sure you've heard people talk about it. It was quite popular. I borrowed my roommate's copy and she has all of them, so I'm planning on reading them all. I just did not get around to the other ones this month, but I really enjoyed it. I honestly, a love triangle gives me heart palpitations. It's so hard for me to like, oh, I hate not knowing who she's gonna choose, but I will do it for these books because I love Criminal Minds and just I love the idea of this whole like Naturals story. Next, I read Homebound by Meredith Trapp, which is a cowboy romance, cowboy/hockey romance, cowgirl/hockey romance. The first one was Icebound, which I really enjoyed, and this is the second in that series. The MMC is a hockey player, but it's all set in Texas, and he's like home for the summer during the off season. He's a single dad, and such a good single dad, and this is his like childhood crush, and he's like, this is the summer I'm gonna win her over. She's a bull rider, she is BA, and he like spends the summer like winning her over, but he's also the sweetest dad, and there's steamy sex. It was great. I gave it 4 stars. I know I mentioned Wild Eyes at the beginning, and now is the time we're talking about it. This was again an arc, but it's out now, and I gave this one 5 stars. This took the place as my favorite Elsie Silver book. Truly, this was so good. West was perfection. I'm just gonna read my little notes that I posted on Goodreads because I just think I summed it up good, and I won't be able to say it better than this. I said, this book has taken its rightful place as my favorite book that Elsie has written. The deep soulmate connection that West and Skylar have is something so tender and heart-wrenching. I was enamored from the first time they met. West is such a sweetheart. And then I have some little quotes. You are brimming with personality and humor and important things to say. And your relationship status just might be the least interesting thing about you. I've known you for 1 day, and I already know that. You don't love someone only when it's convenient or easy. You love them when it's fucking awful and the world is falling apart around you. Love. Next, for book club, I read The Perfect Couple by Ellen Hildebrand. I did give this one like 4.75, which I know feels like so annoying to just not give it 5 stars. But the whole point is that they're like there for a wedding weekend, and the maid of honor shows up dead on the like day of the wedding. They find her body floating in the water at the beach, and the whole book is told from like then and now of them trying to, you getting the backstory and them trying to solve it. You do kind of get an answer, but there feels like there's so many unanswered questions at the end, which is why I didn't feel like I could give it 5 stars. This was my second Ellen Hildebrand book, and I liked it much better. Hey, Kate! I liked it much better than the first one that I read, and I will be reading her other books. They're so summery and great. Probably I won't read anymore for the rest of the year because, as I said, they're summery and it's September now. But next year I'll get into it again. Now we go into a string, 2 arcs. And I gave both of them 5 stars. So the first is Let's Call a Truce. This comes out in January. And again, I'm just going to read you my review on Goodreads because I said it best. This book was a roller coaster of emotions that I didn't want to get off of. I could not have pictured how Ben and Juliana's story was going to unfold, but it was so beautiful. The chemistry these two had was off the charts, and I love it when he falls first and harder. Ben was 10 times hotter because he was such a good dad. There were a few bumps in the road, but in the end, I couldn't be happier. So This is two single parents. It's a workplace romance. She is a widower. Her husband passed and she has two young daughters, so she goes back to work to help support them. And this guy at work she thinks is so hot, but he kind of says something rude on her first day, and so it gets them off on a wrong foot. And so they start this workplace rivalry because of that. But little does she know, he is also a single parent. And as they learn more about each other, they start to fall for each other. But as I said, he falls first and harder, and it is so good. 5 stars. Next, I read Bad Publicity by Bianca Gillum. Again, as I said, an arc. This book comes out in February of next year, so a little bit of a wait. And I gave this one 5 stars. I will again read my review. How have I been so lucky to read so many great books this month? This book was one where the two main characters have a history and for whatever reason had a falling out. You spend the whole book trying to figure out if the reason they're no longer friends is a valid reason or not, but let me tell you, the way I was not expecting the reasoning behind the disagreement, and also felt like both sides had valid reasons for having a falling out. I feel like it's rare in books when you feel that way about the reason why they have a falling out. Usually, it feels like something trivial that should have been gotten over a long time ago, or it's serious enough that they probably shouldn't get over it. Jack was such a cinnamon roll, and I was obsessed with him from the beginning. I loved seeing Andy open up to herself, but also the people around her, and be able to overcome and grow from grief and trauma from her past. I also eat up a workplace romance. Another workplace romance, and another book with grief in it. Did I mention? I did say she was a widower in the last book. Again, grief. There's lots of grief happening. I did cry during this book. Let me read you this quote. I reach the last chapter. My breath catches in my throat as I tear through it, desperate to get to the end before the shop closes. The feeling of turning the final page is like emerging from being underwater, taking a first breath. The world feels new again. Tears roll down my face as I close the book, pooling in my collarbone. For the little boy who used to sit in this chair alone. For the Jack who only ever wanted to apologize to make things right. So, the basic premise of this is that our main character, Andy, she is a publicist and she gets a new job, and on her first day she finds out that one of the authors that she's representing is someone that she has a history with and does not like, and that they have to go on a month-long book tour in Europe, and she does not like this man. They had a falling out, and as I said, you spend the whole book trying to figure out what the falling out was about, and also them fighting their like sexual chemistry. I love a book about book stuff. The fact she's a publicist, he's an author, it was just so good. Next, I read Daydream by Hannah Grace, and this is the third in the Icebreaker like series, the Maple Hills series, I guess. This follows Henry is our sweet, sweet boy from all of these previous books. He's just such a sweetheart, and I'm obsessed with him. And him and Hallie are goals. She's a bookish girly with anxiety. She's an oldest daughter. She's a perfectionist, like so relatable to Hallie. I was personally. She's a Swiftie, like just I really saw myself in her, and that's why I loved this book. It was my favorite of the series so far. I gave this one 4 stars. The basic premise is that Henry has like a learning disability. It never really addresses what it is, but he has like ADHD, possibly on the spectrum somehow, and he can't focus, and so she helps to tutor him, and in exchange he helps give her dating experience because she's an author and she feels like she doesn't have enough experience to write the romance book that she wants to write. So they kind of do a little exchange, and they're just like such sweet friends to lovers. And again, Henry's so sweet, and Hallie is a girl after my own heart. So I really like this one. Okay, we're coming down to the final stretch, guys. This month I also discovered Tara DeWitt. Don't know why I didn't realize that I was gonna like her books. So I read Savor It by Tara DeWitt for a video that's not out yet, but it's reading books by new authors. And After I read it, I did realize I had read Funny Feelings by her and didn't realize it was by Tara DeWitt, but I loved Funny Feelings and I really enjoyed Savor It as well. I gave Savor It 4.5 stars. Again, these books have dead parents. The FMC is an orphan and the MMC is taking care of his niece because his niece's mom died, so he has custody of his niece. He's a chef, which such a hot profession, and he moves to the small town to kind of get back on his feet because he had some career issues, and he's helping to open a restaurant in the town that she's from. And along the way, they start to kind of fake date, but also there's this town competition every year that she really wants to win and prove to herself and the townspeople that she like deserves to be there. And it's a partner competition, and so he decides to help her in this competition. So there's like, they're training together, spending lots of time together. It was sexy, it was spicy, and it was good. Next, I read Tinsel by Devney Perry. This is the final book. There's a novella after Tinsel, but it's not a book in the series. There's 4 books in the series. It's the Lark Cove series, and I had read the first 3 earlier this year, and this follows our FMC, Sophia. She's like a spoiled heiress, and she gets some kind of like bad press and decides to go and stay and kind of hide out with her brother in Montana. And while she's there, she just kind of decides to like start up like a little flirtation, a little fling, a little friends with benefits situation with a local guy there. But of course it develops into something more, and there's another dead parent in this, and he's Native American and has a lot of issues. His family have a lot of issues with him not ending up with another Native American person. They want him to move back to the reservation. There's honestly a lot of talking about like some kind of class and racial issues, which was really interesting and unexpected. But I did end up giving this one 4 stars. I did cry during the epilogue. It was so sweet because it kind of brought all of the characters from the series together in just such a sweet and awesome way. So I loved it. It was a good ending to the series. Finally, as I said, I discovered Tara DeWitt this month, so I did read The Co-op, which is also by her. It's childhood, like lovers to enemies to friends to lovers, if that makes any sense. They had a thing when they were children and then broke up, and now 10 years later she's back in the town where he lives because their grandparents have given them the house that they lived in, and they're trying to fix it up together, but the only way they can afford to fix it up is through her inheritance, and she has to be married to get her inheritance. So there's also a marriage of convenience happening. They get married and have to work together through their animosity to fix up this house. And it was really cute and sweet. And that is all of the books that I read this month. This was a long video, and I will try and get it up ASAP, but I do have to edit it still, and my roommate and I are going to see Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 tonight. I will be crying. I can't wait. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next month for lots more videos, or I guess this month because it's September, for lots of reading videos. I have so many planned and on the way. So that's all. I'll see you somewhere else on the internet. I have TikTok, I have Instagram. Follow me on all those places.